Yellowjackets is 2/3 of the way through season 2, and with only 3 episodes left, I'm really wondering how many answers we'll get before the credits roll in the season 2 finale. Today, we'll be diving into some new Yellowjackets theories, thoughts, and musings, because next week's episode 207, Burial, looks as though it's going to be a great one. With the surviving 6 adult Yellowjackets finally having a reunion at Lottie's compound. Judging by the trailer, it seems like the adult Yellowjackets are going to be getting pretty wild, with their reunion amplified by a few drinks. Does this cause old feelings to come to the surface, and will they slip into how things used to be when they were out in the wilderness? We'll have to wait and see if there are any startling revelations exposed in episode 207, but for now, let's get into some things you may have missed and the latest theories. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was Lottie's therapist, because I think most people have caught on now that there is definitely something amiss here, and it's not as easily explained as the show has led us to believe, with saying, oh, this is just another therapist that's filling in for her usual one. So if you remember back to when we first saw the therapist, obviously the room, we saw the whole room, we saw the therapist, we saw her face, she was speaking, and her and Lottie were wearing the same color. We've talked about this, they were wearing white. Last episode that we saw the therapist was, well, we didn't actually see the therapist, we just saw Lottie in there, and Lottie was wearing like a dark maroon, and we could just see kind of the edge of the therapist's arm, and they were wearing the same color. And in the trailer for episode 207, Lottie's wearing black, so it's gone from white, a little bit darker, and now totally to black. But when you line these 3 shots up, I'll try and put them on the screen at the same time so you can see, but it literally looks as though they are in a slightly different room. I mean, the room is probably the same, but just the way things are arranged, like in one of them there's a painting behind her with a gold trim frame, but it's not there earlier. And then at the bottom of the screen, when it's the last episode that we just saw, and then episode 207's trailer, you can see that there's just the wall directly behind her. But if you look at the first session, there's like this wooden thing there, and then there's space. There's also just a little bit of the settings are changed. The pillows in the first week are a little bit different. And I went back and watched the scene where Lottie first meets the therapist and she's talking about the sabbatical and stuff like that. And they say, oh, you're not due for 5 weeks. And just giving us that information too. I really wouldn't be surprised if there was a phone call or something where the real therapist who she's seen for 10 years calls and will be like, why did you miss your appointment? And she'll say, oh, well, I've been seeing your person that's covering, and they'll say, no, there isn't anyone covering, because I really think that this therapist is in Lottie's head. Of course, the first appointment could have been real and these other ones aren't, because as I said, there's just so many things in the room that just look slightly off. And the whole sequence with Shauna and the baby in episode 206, I mean, going into it, I've talked about this before, that I work in the medical industry, and that whole thing with the placenta previa, either when I heard that and that was what was happening, I was like, either the baby isn't going to make it, or the writers have done like no research at all, because no one would survive that. Like, it's not possible. So I have put faith in the Yellowjackets writers. So I definitely did not think what we were seeing was reality. And then there was things that confirmed it, like Lottie when she had the baby, and then obviously them attacking the baby or eating the baby and things like that just triggered me. So when I was watching it, because I had that information, I was watching it in a bit of a different way. And I've gone back and watched it obviously a lot of times, and there's just little things that are off in that kind of dream or whatever you want to call it that Shauna was having, like a vision or just hallucinating. And there's little things like outside, the trees and the weather's different. And some of the big things to me that kind of also stood out was that when Shauna first passes out and she's really waking up in the hallucination, you hear someone saying Shauna, Shauna.
Shauna. Shauna.
and it's definitely Jackie. Like, there's no doubt in my mind it's Jackie. The subtitles did say something different, but then also there is all the Yellowjackets around her, and they're smiling exactly like how when Jackie ended up freezing to death pretty much, and when she's waking up and the cabin guy's there and all the Yellowjackets are there and they're giving her the hot chocolate, it just really looked like a similar scene to me. And then also, if you remember, Jackie ended up actually taking the drink and she ended up passing away, but Shauna doesn't take anything from them. So I thought that was maybe of note too. But anyway, to go back to the therapist, sorry, I've gone off on like a tangent here. But also the therapist in this week calls her Lottie, and we haven't heard anyone else call her Lottie. Like, she doesn't go by that anymore. All the people that she knows, except for the adult Yellowjackets, call her Charlotte. So I thought that was pretty weird as well.
It was all of us. It was a part of us. What is it, Lottie?
And then also we have that little flash in the episode 7 trailer that looks as though it's the Antler Queen sitting somewhere else. It looks similar to the therapist's office. Again, a few little things are off, and I really think that flash for episode 7 is going to be Lottie seeing herself underneath the Antler Queen garb, because, you know, we had the one with Nat where it is 0.1 of a second that flash is in there, and Lottie has like a ring that looks very similar. When you look at the Antler Queen, has like her arms on one of the chairs, and it looks as though she has like a similar ring to Lottie on. So I think in this week's episode we're gonna maybe see Lottie under there, and this just is adding more into, I'm like, are all of them having this hallucination together? Like, are all of them the Antler Queen? Are all of them seeing bits of themselves, or collectively they were all her? Because it's just even more curious when we see these little bits where they are seeing themselves portrayed as the Antler Queen in their own minds. This isn't really theory, this is just something that I thought was a little odd, and maybe it will mean something in the future. But I think maybe Tai is switching a lot more than we know, because, you know, we had that car crash with Simone. I think the Tai switch there, it looked as though her eyes closed really quickly and she switched. And at the end of episode 206, when all of the adult Yellowjackets are getting there, we see Tai get out of the car and like beeline for Misty and give her this huge hug, and she's like smiling like massively. And I just thought that was so weird, because Tai has really shown that she cannot stand Misty. And even in this episode, when Misty called, Tai was like, oh, I don't have time for you right now.
I don't have time for you right now. I am at a residential wellness center. Where you're getting help? Everyone is getting help from one Charlotte Matthews.
Nothing changed in Misty and Ty's relationship between that phone call and her getting to the compound. So why would she get out? I get getting out and going up to her, because obviously like they know each other, but she was real happy about that hug. So I was thinking maybe while they were pulling up, there was a few moments while Van and Tai were having like the conversation where they said that Shauna, where it looked as though her eyes were closed for like a second longer than a blink, but maybe that's just me reading into it. Next, I wanted to talk about Van, because I've been seeing people talking about this, about whether Van has some sort of addiction, or whether the story that she told about her mom actually applied to her and that she was sick, or the story that she told Tai was real and that she was looking after her mom and she had those meds because of that, and she just, you know, went into the trash and took them because she was having a bad time or something that day with Tai showing up. I mean, that's understandable, but the other two were the more sort of better options to me. It was either she's sick or she is having, you know, addictions like Nat. And I do think that it was kind of split either way for the evidence. But this week I was like, oh, maybe she is sick, because when Tai looks in the trash and sees the bills, they're different bills to the ones that she threw in the trash when we first met her and she was having that scene in episode 5. And the ones this week, it's a medical group on the envelope that the bills are coming from. And yeah, like she could have an appointment with her practitioner or something, but it just seemed like an odd choice. Like, why would you just not put more? The other bills were like mortgage and like electric company or something. So you could have put like water or gas or something. One of the envelopes says IGG. And although IGG is probably a company in the Yellowjackets universe, it made me think about the IgG as in your blood. And there's actually a lot of evidence that IgG is highly expressed in a variety of non-B cells. So that could be in a variety of tumor tissues like breast cancer, lung cancer, prostate, bladder cancer. And again, it's probably just a made up company name, but it did make me think of that. So I just wanted to have a little bit of a discussion here about what is going on just in general, but with this flashing that's happening with Coach Ben, and that's happening with some of the other scenes or characters, because we see it happening with Lottie next week through the trailer and the little Antler Queen bit. And then we saw it happen with Coach Ben this week, and we've seen it happen with him a lot. So this week, whenever Coach Ben, or last week, I guess now, was having his flash to try and go and play charades with Paul, you could see that where he was kind of a mixture between the real world and the cabin, and it was kind of morphed in between them. And then there's also been, Nat having the vision of the Antler Queen and everyone being on the plane. And there's even Lottie, whenever she went to see Travis, there was some flashes there. And Lottie saw things like her putting the Antler Queen antlers on at the Dooms Coming last year. And then there was other bits with her like smashing her head on the glass. And there was also a really, really quick flash of like a bloody face that to me looks totally like Lottie. And we've seen all these other little tiny flashes and things, and none of those are in there by accident. It's like the whole therapist's room. Some people would say, oh, maybe they just made a mistake and like left something there, but working on sets like that doesn't, I mean, it can happen, of course, like the Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones, but whenever they're doing injuries or they're setting up these rooms, like there's people's literal job it is to, if I was filming, it would be like, oh, this cup was exactly here and you picked it up with your left hand. Like there is someone whose job it is to sit on set with a script and tell everyone, you touched it with your left hand and you drank this much out of it, and then you picked up your phone and set it here. Like they absolutely meticulously track everything so that obviously there's not mistakes like that. So everything, like the therapist room, all these, and obviously like all those flashes and things, like they're in there purposefully. So I kept thinking like, what is going on with these? And we saw, even in the credits, there's bits like that. And there's tons of them this season. So when you're rewriting a VHS tape or like taping something over, that's when you get this sort of, it's not static. It's just basically trying to rewrite over what's on the tape. And so then I was thinking, we have these sort of two realities with Coach Ben, and then we know that there's things with the past and things with the future, and what Nat's saying about we shouldn't have left, and Tai, that's not where we're supposed to be, and all these things. It just made me think that there is something I don't know how to actually express this. I have a feeling that at the end of season 2 they're gonna like go back to the crash site and like find their own graves or something like that, because or another one would be they were in a mental asylum all along, because I really feel like they keep talking about the fact that they didn't know Lottie was out. Like, I thought Lottie was in Switzerland and locked up. And they really, really keep hammering it home. And I just keep thinking about all those episodes of like Buffy and stuff where they leave it open to interpretation at the end and be like, ooh, was she really like the vampire slayer that was out killing monsters? Or was she locked up in a psychiatric hospital and it was all in her head? So I really hope they don't go that route. But there's been a lot of stuff this season where it's been, last episode, perfect example, Shauna, the whole dream thing that she was in, and we've seen the entire trailer basically that we saw this season. I'd say 3/4 of it was dream states, because so much of what we've seen has not been real. So I don't quite know how to put this into words, but I just feel like there's all of that says something, but I don't quite know what it says yet. So I'm hoping that this week we're going to see a little bit more. There's still a few little snippets of the trailer that we haven't, like the overall season trailer that we haven't seen. Probably the biggest scene being when they're obviously like charging out with all those weapons. And now I wouldn't be surprised if that's fake or, in someone's mind. But all of that to say, let me know down below. Do you think they're all in the psychiatric hospital? Do you think we're in different timelines? Do you think we're in different realities, different worlds? Do you think they're all really dead? Do you think that they are actually still out there, still in the wilderness? And I just am really, really perplexed as to what's going on with the static and these other little things that seem to be implying that reality and sort of this dream, hallucinations are kind of bleeding together. And I also am just very curious to see where they're going to go with these next 3 episodes. I really feel like it's just within reach and it's all going to fall into place soon, I hope. Anyway, so let me know down below what you think, and I'll be back this weekend with some more theories after episode 207. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, make sure to stay safe, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.